Greetings. This is going to be a video that revisits one of the recent topics on this channel, which is how the telework revolution is transforming many types of economic activity and has a lot of very interesting secondary and tertiary effects, and how the telework revolution is a very obvious and natural progression of the atom concept, or the technonomic medium of the world accelerating, because a lot of highly paid, highly productive people are losing time and productivity by spending 1 to 2 hours a day just commuting. And we can also attack the fallacy of why an in-person meeting is always essential. It's essential some of the times, but people think in very binary terms, and this is how they fail to understand technological disruption, because they don't see all the secondary and tertiary forces at play. So other videos on this channel include how commuters have gone away, as evidenced by the New York City subways and Bay Area traffic, as you can see in this tile up here, as well as how a lot of economists and other academic types have the quote-unquote bright idea that teleworkers should be paying an additional income tax, 5% higher income tax rate. And I eviscerate that point in this video over here. The fact that they think that remote workers should be taxed more shows how inverted their value system is and how out of touch relative to the real economy those people are. I make the argument that remote workers should be paid more, not less. And I'm happy to debate anyone who says remote workers should be taxed, because I can reduce such a person to a pile of shattered glass. Remote workers should be paid more, not less. Now, moving on to the topic of this video, Kevin OLeary, one of the longtime judges on the Shark Tank show, and a very good business mind in terms of explaining business concepts in simple terms to people, he appeared as a guest on the Bill Maher show, and he talked about telework. And before I play this clip, I want to remind everyone that I predicted very early that most service type jobs, as in jobs done from a desk, would see a 50 to 80% reduction in-office work, because people want to live further away, and companies want to be able to hire people over a larger pool, people in other cities, rather than just the pool of people who can commute to their office every day. Now, obviously, some types of service work, such as healthcare professionals who work in hospitals or people who work in restaurants, that has to be in person, but tons and tons of other service type jobs, particularly in the tech industry, the financial services industry, etc., all of those can be remote and can be away from the office 50 to 80% of the time on average. That means some people can be away 100% of the time. Some people have to be there more often, but I say 50 to 80% reduction in their day-to-day commuting volume was to be expected, and longtime viewers of this channel know I've said that for a long time. So see here what Kevin OLeary corroborates, and how he thought that there would be only a 15%, 15% reduction in office visits, but it's showing up as over 50% across all of his companies and the associated partner companies. So let's move on to the clip.
And I understand that you can't get a lot of people to come back to the office. That you thought it would be like 15% who wouldn't come back after the pandemic, but it's really something like 55% who say they will never come back?
They're never coming back.
Well, doesn't that tell you something about how much they must have fucking hated the office to begin with?
They have proven to everybody all around the world that they can use technology to do their jobs successfully, creatively, functionally, productively. They want to stay at home, raise their kids, take care of their elderly parents. And in fact, if you say to them, you have to come back to the office, that's our new mandate, they'll say, nah, I'm just going to quit and work somewhere else. So we thought it was 15%. We have a sample size of about 10,000 people in our supply chain plus our companies. I thought it would be in accounting, logistics, compliance departments, the people who used to work in cubicles. It's everybody. They don't want to come back. And so we have to learn to live this way, and I'm okay with it. It works. I find it really interesting. One of the guys that's crucial to our whole operating company accounting said to me, I grew up on a farm. I'm going back to the farm. I'm going to live on the farm. I'll work for you, but it's going to be from the farm. I said, cool. I'm okay with it. No problem.
So there you go. He said 55% across his many thousands of employees. And those who follow the first principles of technology and economics would not be surprised to hear that at all. I mean, once email started, the vast majority of written communication is now over email, and over much greater volume than before when people wrote handwritten letters. Sure, occasionally people write handwritten letters when a personal touch is needed, but that is not a large volume of anyone's communication. When's the last time you've written a handwritten letter, and how many have you written relative to the number of emails you have sent? The same is true regarding going to the office every day interfacing with people face to face every day, and the commute burden. Yes, some meetings do have to be in person, but that is not a large percentage of meetings, and the transit time has to be taken into account. Bill Maher says that people must have hated the office. That can't be the entirety of it. I think they probably hated their commutes more. Even if the office is a decent place, if you're spending an hour a day in traffic, wasting your time, wasting your gasoline, contributing to traffic jams, taking the risk of getting into a traffic accident, and if you care about the environment, also contributing to environmental pollution, then obviously working from home is more efficient. If you hate paying too much for housing because you have to live near a certain job, you are finally liberated from that leash. If you can live 2 to 3 times further away, the amount of area in which you can search for housing is much greater. Remember, twice the distance means 4 times the area. 3 times the distance means 9 times the area, and you will find much lower cost of living under those circumstances. In the old days, they had something called boom towns, such as whenever a town found oil, or a major corporation built a factory in a small town, or a major governmental facility, such as a military base or some major governmental office, entered a small town, suddenly the entire economy of that town changed, and tons of other people moved there just to support the activities of the people working in the primary facility that made the town economically vibrant relative to before. And so such a town was called a boom town. Now we have something called zoom towns, in that people are living in a place that is desirable to live in, lower cost of living, but still doing their big city job from far away. This is known as a zoom town. Everything from Las Vegas, Nevada to Austin, Texas to the Inland Empire of Southern California has become a zoom town or a sequence of zoom towns, because a lot of good jobs are 70 to 200 miles away from there, and infrequent visits can be made, but certainly not daily visits, and people are working from home. And this is good. Traffic has reduced substantially. Now, Kevin OLeary says 55% of his workers are working from home. Let's revisit some of the data I have presented to corroborate that. This is New York City subway usage. New York City is a gigantic economy. It has a large number of high-paying jobs, including very high-paying jobs on Wall Street, but also jobs in many, many other sectors, from publishing to media to fashion to law to consumer marketing, so forth. Weekly turnstile entries have fallen about 60% since the pre-COVID amount. It was pretty steady for several years before March of 2020, and it fell and has only risen partly from that point. It is 60% below its pre-COVID peak. And since more of the higher paying jobs are in Manhattan, of course, Manhattan's share of total subway ridership is substantially below the peak. It was extremely stable for years and years and years, and now it's substantially below the peak. And therefore, combining the two charts, Manhattan weekly turnstile entries has fallen by 2/3. So even with all the stimulus money and the end of unemployment benefits and all kinds of excuses that were made for why people are not returning back to work, obviously that's not a large percentage of the workforce, because turnstile entries in Manhattan are 2/3 below their peak. That is huge. This is a major revolution in the relationship between people and what they do for a living, because only 1/3 as many people are commuting to work. They're working from home, and therefore also the number of jobs that they are eligible for rises greatly, because they're not limited to a job search that is within a certain amount of their home, nor do they have to relocate if a job is, say, somewhat further away. In a metro area the size of New York City, if you lived on one side but a job was on the other side, you might not be able to take that job just because commuting within the New York City metro area was an extremely difficult thing given the huge size of that metro. It could be 2 hours a day each way, even though you're still within the greater New York City metropolitan area. That is terrible, and this Zoom revolution has done incredible things for that. So we looked at New York City, now let's look at Silicon Valley. This, of course, is a Google traffic map, and this is current for where I am. This is 4:15 p.m. on November 16th, 2021, which is a Tuesday. This should be peak rush hour. And while you can see a small amount of red here and there and a fair bit of orange, there's still a lot of green. Now, I can tell you that pre-COVID, the Bay Area was incredibly gridlocked with traffic. This whole thing would have been red, and the best parts would have been orange. That's how much traffic there was. Now, these tech workers, which are specifically concentrated in the area that I'm enclosing in my circle here, are not commuting that much because the tech industry has adapted to remote work, especially the core part of Silicon Valley, which is Palo Alto, Menlo Park, Mountain View, Sunnyvale. This is almost completely green. This was the most jam-packed part of all, and it's completely green. Look at this Dumbarton Bridge, it's completely green. So the core portion of the tech industry is completely working from home. The only points that are even orange at peak rush hour, mind you, peak rush hour, are the poorly designed choke points that comprise the 280 to 85 intersection and so forth. You can also see that traffic going into San Francisco, this would normally be the worst of all, is also quite green, with gridlock only in downtown San Francisco itself. Relative to 2019, this is a dramatic improvement. The Bay Area would not get this clear until 8 p.m. or later in the pre-COVID world. But now it's this free-flowing at 4:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. So pretty close to peak rush hour. You can check this anytime you want. Due to the wonders of technology, you can check the traffic in any city in the world at any time that you want, real time, to get an idea whether that city has terrible traffic or has cleared up substantially. Since the tech industry has adapted completely to telework, you now see how traffic jams are a very infrequent thing, even in a place that was completely gridlocked pre-COVID. And this saves a tremendous amount of money from another technological perspective, in that no highway really needs to be widened anymore. California cannot widen most of its highways because to widen a highway costs about $10 million per mile. And the low productivity of the construction sector combined with all the red tape in California means that you just cannot widen any new highways, let alone build new highways. But now technology has adapted around that bottleneck to create much lower burden on the road system, and pretty much no highway needs to be widened anymore because of the telework revolution. And the telework revolution is not done. The telework technologies like Zoom that exist in 2021 are not in their frozen state. They will continue to improve and become higher resolution and more reliable. So they will get better and better, and people will get better and better at working remotely, so the pressure on traffic is going down further and further. This has implications for everything from car demand to fuel consumption to real estate prices, etc. Office space now has had a 50% permanent reduction. Commercial office space is going to be in a glut for years to come, and a lot of it will have to be repurposed for housing. Gasoline consumption is also going to get lower and lower. We also talk about the shift from gasoline cars to electric vehicles on this channel, but the sheer demand of car driving itself is going down, gasoline or not. This has all kinds of secondary and tertiary effects, but are all very consistent with the first principles of technology, as I often say. This generates more deflation. A reduction in demand of commercial office space means a lot of deflation on the horizon. Less and less oil being consumed means a lot of deflation. All these things are interconnected under the principles of the accelerating technonomic medium. So this is a fun topic to visit from time to time because it represents one of the big technological disruptions of our era, and one that happened very suddenly. It was sudden because of an external shock event, the COVID-19 crisis, that moved it ahead by several years relative to what it otherwise might have been. But now it is a permanent part of the work culture. People are not going back to the office that often at all. Once in a blue moon, they will meet for in-person meetings, but only for important meetings, which are a small percentage of all meetings. Ignore the people who think in binary, saying, oh, Zoom is not as good as an in-person meeting. You know, I went to an in-person meeting at my main office once, but everyone there was wearing masks. If everyone is wearing masks, the whole meeting is completely useless because you cannot see any facial expressions. You might as well be on Zoom. Meetings over Zoom and other telework technologies are saving all the in-transit time, and it's revolutionizing a lot of social activity, whether business or personal. And we'll talk about some of those in other videos over here. But I hope you found this information to be useful and found this type of data to be informative to look at. And if you like this type of content, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel. Thank you very much for watching.